Alberta section, STLE, in partnership with SAE. Here's the list of our executive. As always, we always welcome new people, and we would love to have some new ideas shared our way. So if you're interested, please let us know. Obviously, today we have Michael presenting on which certification is right for me. In February, we will have Mark Ansco. He'll be presenting. And in March, we have Craig Winterfield presenting on SEM-EDS, Advanced Wear Debris Analysis for Optimized Maintenance. STLE at office, so they have metalworking fluid management program going on in February. So if you're interested in that, definitely check that out. A new item that we would like to share with you is we actually are looking at hosting a certification training with Michael. And so the plan is for it to be in person, either OMA or SCLS, or maybe even both, depending on interest. At the end of this, there will be a survey sent out, and if I can encourage everyone to please check out the survey and give us some feedback so that we kind of know which direction we should go on for this training. Okay, dates and costs will follow. But yeah, Alberta section, for this training, we're not looking to be making money from it. So if we can basically break even, or even if we have to fork out a little bit, we're going to be working with our members to, if they're interested in the training, we'll help you out. STLE Alberta, you can follow us on our website, LinkedIn, and YouTube is where our recordings are posted. Presentation details. As a few of you messaged today, you're wondering about mute. Usually you guys are automatically on mute. And if need be, I can request that you guys unmute if you need to verbalize a question. But if there's any issues there, I will let them know and address. If you have any questions, there is the chat and the Q&A features. One of us at the executive will be always watching that, and we'll give feedback on there as well. Any questions, we will try to push to the end of the presentation. And yeah, note that this is being recorded. And we get to welcome our speaker today. So Michael Holloway with Fifth Order Industry, LLC, has over 35 years experience in the industry. Michael started Fifth Order as a business for competency development and CLS, OMA, and ICML certification preparation. From 2013 to 2019, he worked for ALS Tribology. 1999 to 2013, he served as director for NCH Corp. Prior to 1999, Holloway worked as an applications engineer, OEM specialist for General Electric's plastics, Rowan Haas electronic chemicals as a product engineer, as an aerospace materials engineering chemist for W.R. Grace, and as a polymer research chemist for Olin Chemical. Holloway served as the North Texas Section Chair and Condition Monitoring Chair for STLE, as well as Certification Examiner for the International Council for Machinery Lubrication, and adjunct professor at the University of North Texas. Holloway has numerous certifications, including the STLE's CLS and OMA, and all 8 of the ICML certifications, and the CLGS through NLGI, and holds the US patent number 7241723, bearing cleaning composition and method of use 2007, and is the author of 9 industry-based books. To say it very bluntly, Michael, you know a lot. You know a lot. So, and obviously today's topic is which certification is right for me. There are a dozen lubrication certifications to achieve through STLE, ICML, and NLGI. Each certification has its purpose. In our 30-minute presentation, you'll understand what they are, and we will figure out which is best according to your job, your career, and your personal and company goals. Join Michael, holder of all the certifications, as well as someone who has instructed over 1,200 professionals in obtaining and keeping their certifications. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen, and I will hand over controls. Michael will be able to share his. And yeah, awesome. Welcome, Michael.
Good deal. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let me get this on, and then we can, let's see, do this. Let me see. Can you see that slide?
Not yet.
Okay. If back up a sec then.
There we go. Which lubrication is right for me?
Awesome. Cool. Good deal. All right. What I can do, yeah. Well, thank you very much. I don't have access to see if there's any questions asked or whatever, but feel free. I'll let the moderators chime in if you want. I don't mind being interrupted at all, because God only knows I'm socially inept, so I typically interrupt when I'm not supposed to too, so it's all cool, I understand. So definitely chime in. We want to talk a little bit about the various types of certifications that are out there and try to explore which one might be best for whoever. And they really are numerous. In my experience, I've seen everything from sales and marketing folks to purchasing agents, all the way down to scientists in the field of lubrication and tribology achieve all various types of certifications for various reasons. And to say one is best for something is really, that's a misnomer. And actually it's really a bit unfair too, because I think each one of these certifications that we'll review today has their merit and they have their place in industry. And it's kind of for those of you who know any of the history, obviously STLE has been around for quite a long time. The CLS is probably the oldest certification for being recognized as a lubrication specialist. And then the OMA and NLGI had come up with one. We're going to mention the NLGI one briefly, but not go into too much detail about it. That's their certified lubrication specialist. And then we'll also explore the ICML offerings too. Now, the three different bodies that we definitely understand foremost, first being the International Council for Machinery Lubrication. It was developed over 20 years ago. And then NLGI, that's even older than ICML. That's been around even longer. Unfortunately, I thought that the NLGI might have been around longer than STLE, but I don't think it was. I don't think it has been. I actually think STLE, prior to being STLE, was, and you guys actually know a little bit more about the history than I may, was called something different out of Chicago. I believe it was I'm drawing a blank now. Anyway, but that's been around for at least, well, ever since, it's been around for 75 years, since 1944. Anyway, so it's been around 78 years. NLGI, I thought, was probably built around the same time as well. And there's only one certification through NLGI. And then obviously there's 4 through STLE. The 2 that are most known, obviously the OMA and CLS. And here's, let's say, a run of what we're actually looking at today. As you can see, ICML started the MLT, and then they just kind of ran with it and did the MLA, and then did levels. And then the latest one they've pushed out is the MLE. We'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, many of you know of the Certified Lubrication Specialist through STLE, which is the CLS, and that's more or less the grandmother of them all. She's been around forever, and that's really the most recognized certification there is in the world. There's only probably I believe there's less than 1,300 folks that actually hold that certification now. It wanes every month. Sometimes people take an exam, sometimes they let their certification lapse. So that number varies each month. But I believe there's approximately 1,300. And then obviously the OMA, we'll talk a little bit about the OMA 2 and the metalworking fluid one. And then the Certified Lubrication Grease Specialist, which I'll touch briefly upon that now. We're not going to go into a whole lot of detail on that. There's only 43 of us that hold that certification. And quite frankly, it's a really specialized certification that focuses on several different aspects of grease. Not only just the basic chemistry of grease, the application, the storage, but also the production and the development, manufacturing thereof as well. It's actually a very, it's an intense body of knowledge, and it's one where, surprisingly, you can't really take it. Well, I guess you could, but you can try to take the courses that NLGI offers up, the basic and then the advanced grease course, and that only covers about half of what you need to know. The other stuff, you just need to know it through experience. And it's the only exam I've ever taken that I failed, which I felt really humbled because it's happened 3 years ago. And I didn't like that. I hate failing. And Maribel will tell you, she knows me pretty well. I'm incredibly competitive and I really don't like failing, but I failed that one. and the passing, you have to get 80% or greater. And I got a 72%, and I was embarrassed. And I actually thought I studied for it. So I spent the past 2 years boning up for it and really studying my tail off. And then I ended up going to the NLGI meeting and taking another course and just pulling the instructors aside after every session, just trying to get in between their ears to understand stuff. And fortunately, I did pass, which by the grace of God and all, that's great. I did pass, which is great. And it was, but it is a particular type of certification that it's an intense grease-focused certification. And if you're in the business of grease, it's probably something to think about. I know NLGI and STLE are developing a really nice collaboration, which is good to see. They have their places. STLE definitely has a grease section that's admirable. NLGI goes so much deeper into the weeds when it comes to grease that it's really, there's, like I said, there's great collaboration between two. And if you ever go to NLGI meeting, chances are everybody you see there is everybody that's at STLE anyway. So it's like going to a family picnic and then going to your in-laws family picnic. You just know everybody anyway. So, but it is kind of cool. But if you folks that are involved heavy into the manufacturing and development of grease and really and truly the advanced applications of it, that's one particular cert that you should probably think about. It's something to definitely explore. The only time you can take the exam is at the annual meeting once a year. They don't offer it up online. There are no certification preparation classes truly for it, although I'm trying to build one. But I'm finding it exceedingly difficult because it's going to be greater than 40 hours worth of instruction, according to all the content that they have to want you to master. So we're still in the works of that, but we'll see. Now, what I wanted to do is touch base on just a couple of these out that are coming through. For instance, we're going to hit the CLS and the OMA here in a minute. The ICML started up the MLT, and that was the Machinery Lubrication Technician Level 1. And that was really developed as an answer to, back in the day, over 20 years ago, they wanted to have this organization that was developed, ICML, wanted to begin something more or less for folks who greased bearings and changed oil, and that weren't college educated or basically were punching a time clock. So the ICML was formed and they developed this certification called that Machinery Lubrication Technician. And they started up with level 1, which basically technicians responsible for daily lubrication tasks. And you have to have at least 2 years experience. And in order to take the exam, you have to take a class that's worth at least 24 hours. And understandably, the technicians that are responsible for daily lubrication tasks, such as oil changes, top-ups, greasing bearings, lubrication, receiving, storage, and dispensing, that's what this particular cert is really geared towards. The second one, though, the level up, is a little bit higher level. It's basically for a little bit senior level technician or those aspiring for the management level of maintenance management, where they're managing lube teams, selecting lubricants, troubleshooting, and whatnot, and supporting machine design. Once again, this is not as intense as a CLS. It's more of a primer, if you will. Now, when we look at STLE, we see the OMA, and that is really focused on lubricant analysis and condition monitoring. Well, ICML's answer to that was the MLA 1. And once again, touch upon this. At one time, the ISO 18436 had a requirement. The requirements to do that were laid out. The OMA actually hit it. But I believe now, I think, and once again, I'll have to talk to the folks in certification or STLE, we hit it. And then for some reason, they went in and changed the ISO requirements. And then I believe also all STLE had to do was petition for it, but I guess just wasn't done. So it wasn't continued. So now I believe, according to proxy, I believe that OMA 1 is ISO 18436. I believe so. I can stand corrected. Be that as it may, the MLA 1 and the OMA share very similar content. I know because I teach both these cert classes, and the OMA goes into a lot more detail about condition monitoring and testing, but the MLA 1 definitely has many of the same characteristics of the OMA as well. And they're really for technicians and daily activities, being lubrication, like we said with the MLTs. But then they also do get into a little bit more detail on contamination control and problem detection and oil sampling. That's different than MLT, okay? Now, if you read the ISO 18436, they actually do lay out several different things. And in that particular subsection 4, they have 3 levels. So the level 2, okay, that goes into a bit more detail than the level 1. And really, from my experience, because I took both certifications and I teach them all, this one does go into a bit more detail on sample management as well as managing test results. And they do touch upon some simple diagnosis. Then they have the level 3, which goes deeper into advanced diagnostics and setting alarm limits and primarily a little bit of instruments and software selection, but not so much. So I looked at this as saying, my gosh, it looks to be like the OMA is very similar to all 3 MLAs. So in fact, I do teach classes, I do combo classes as well. So engineers and technicians that are responsible for lubricant oil analysis go for these different MLAs. Now, because of the ISO, the way it's laid out, they don't grandfather in anymore. For instance, years ago, you could go and say, hey, listen, I got 10 years experience in the lab or oil analysis. Why do can't I just not think about level 1 and just go on to level 2 or level 3? They used to allow you to do that. They don't allow you to do that anymore. You have to take, probably various fiscal reasons why, but they want you to take the level 1 exam and then take training and then take the level 2, take training and then take the level 3. Whereas years ago, you could have circumvented all that and just gone straight for level MLA 3. What's interesting is if you went into the ICML website and you looked at some of the folks, what certifications they hold, you'd see where there's certain folks that just have, like, for instance, my friend up in Canada, Bill Quinnell, that has WearCheck Canada. He has a level 3. He doesn't have a 1 or a 2. I believe he's just got a level 3 because Bill's, he just said, hey, I live this stuff. Why do I need to take a 1 and a 2? I'm already there. And so they grandfathered him in and they said, yeah, you just don't worry about it. Just take the level 3 and he is. So for folks to have all certifications, rare. Actually, I'm the only one that had them all because I was foolish enough to take them all. But the only reason I did it is because I wanted to experience what students would experience when they're taking those exams. But normally, if I was just a professional, if given the opportunity, heck, I never would have done it. Just go on through to level 2, level 3. Why bother with level 1, right? It's like if you're in college, some folks don't worry about getting their associates. They go straight to their bachelor's degree. Well, a level 1 is like your associates. Level 2 is like your bachelor's, and your level 3 is kind of like the master's. Whereas OMA is kind of like your master's PhD, I guess. So that's the way it used to be. Now you have to go through all levels. Like I said, I think it might have a little bit to do with trying to generate a little bit more revenue for ICML because it's the only way they make money is to administer exams. And they don't have trade shows or conferences or anything like that. They don't sell anything other than exam. So it's probably, I'm not saying that's the reason why, but being the suspicious devil that I am, I have a feeling that might be one of the things. Plus the guys behind the ICML in the shadow group sell certification, so they probably want to sell more courses. And then you have this one. I'm going to talk about these two real quick, and then we'll go on to the STLE offerings. Because it's only fair to do, because we got to look at everything out there to understand, right? The Laboratory Lubricant Analyst 1. This is for lab technicians. These are for folks that are in the laboratory testing oils. There's only probably about 46 or 47 people that hold this particular certification. They're really for techs, and a lot of them are actually in the military in their test labs. These are the folks that are actually testing oils. This actually, the next one up is the level 2. These are for lab managers and senior diagnosticians. This goes into a lot more detail. In fact, it's kind of interesting is that when we teach this one, definitely lubrication samples are definitely paramount, but there's a lot of content in here that can be used in pretty much all laboratories, which is kind of interesting. So whether you're in a bio lab or organic chemistry lab or even a lubricant analyst lab, the stuff we talk about is ubiquitous. We talk about test analysis, instrument calibration, SPC-based quality controls, everything from glassware down to instrumentation that goes beyond just lubrication. So this particular thing, and I don't realize that, I don't think the folks over at ICML even realized it, but the content they ask for and the stuff that we teach goes a lot deeper. Now, just to let you know, there's only 2 folks in the whole world that do the LLA 1s and 2s, and that's myself and Rich Worsbach out of MRG Labs. Nobody else does it. Nobody actually, and it's such a specialized deal. There's only 40, like I said, 40 some odd people that hold the LLA 1. There's about 90 people that hold the LLA 2. Once again, they got the LLA 2 because they were managers who circumvented the requirement for the 1 and just went on straight to 2. Nowadays, you have to get them both. So it's probably going to hamper a little bit more folks going for it. This is actually, the LLA 1s and 2s are really good for laboratory technicians. That's something that I would, and like I said, it's a small demographic, but there's a lot of interesting material that we cover in here that goes beyond just oil analysis. And then the last one we'll talk about with ICML. This is the latest one they pushed out about 4 years ago. Machinery lubrication engineer. This was ICML's answer to CLS. And everybody always looked at CLS as the gold standard. And the MLT 1 and 2 couldn't hold a torch to it. The MLA 1, 2s, and 3s couldn't. LLA was in a different state altogether. So ICML had decided, the body, I believe, and I can't really speak for them because I'm not on the board of directors, but I know a lot of them that were. And I think behind the scenes, they said, hey, we need to have something that's going to at least compete with the CLS. So they put together this. And it's not like the CLS at all, actually. It's really not. I think when they talk about lubrication selection and hardware and a little bit of, they don't even go to fundamentals in the MLA, and a little bit of oil analysis. But I tell you, if you compared the CLS to the MLA, you might find maybe a crossover about 15% content. They're just a completely different certification. So for it to compete with the CLS, it just doesn't. The CLS doesn't compete with this and this doesn't compete with the CLS. They're just really completely different certifications entirely. So this always brings up the question, like, which one is better? Boy, I tell you, it's like getting a doctor of science or getting a doctor of philosophy, getting a doctor of engineering. It depends upon what you're trying to achieve and what you're doing. We'll go into that here in a little bit. Needless to say, the content that they require for something like this is pretty extraordinary, and we'll kind of cover that here in the next 7 minutes. But the MLE is really focused on folks who are lubrication engineers, and it's an engineering certification. So it's folks that are involved in overall program design, and also folks that get involved in training and skills recommendations and lubricant analysis and procedure development. So there's quite a bit that they require you to have a good working knowledge of. We're going to cover that here in a moment. Now here's the one. This is my fave, CLS. This is stuff my late great mentor helped me achieve this way back in the early 2000s, which was the CLS, Lubrication Specialist. And this is really something where, and a lot of us know about this, many of us here have this particular certification. Years ago, if you all remember, we used to have to write out the essay answers for this, and it took about 5 months for it to get graded. For those of you who ever taught classes in college or anything like that, or whatever, you realize an essay answer is horrible because it takes forever to grade. And there's a lot of interpretation and nuances and challenges with those kind of things. They're not easy to grade. So STLE had converted their grading process over to becoming a multiple choice, a lot easier to grade. Now, there's some wisdom behind multiple choice questions, and a lot of folks don't understand the true wisdom behind it. Something that I really always loved about the CLS was they're going to ask you a question, and you have 4 options, just 4. And anytime I've ever taught this class and we go into some, practice questions and whatnot, it's always ripe with debate on which answer is best. And I always come back and say, here's the deal. STLE is the umpire, okay? If the umpire calls a strike up here, guess where the strike is? It's up here. That's what you got to go. You can disagree with it all you want, but the umpire is going to call a strike up here. That's where it's going to be. So they work off of like all these testing organizations, all this, the certification committees, they work off of what's called a body of knowledge. And the body of knowledge is a bunch of books and papers and ASTM documents that basically say, hey, listen, we've done our research, we've gone through peer review, we've done our hard work to explain these concepts and what have you. We consider this what's called canon, or you hear about that with like Marvel and DC Comics and whatnot. Canon means what's set in stone, so to speak. It's biblical stuff. It's not some iteration, it's biblical, right? So it's the gospel. It's written down. So they consider that the be all and the end all. Whether you want to debate it or not, it's great. Debate it all you want, but don't put down the wrong answer because it's going to be rock wrong. So what I always explain to folks is that a multiple choice question is like reality. When a customer, your boss, subordinate, and associate comes to you with an idea or a question, they want to have a correct, fast response. They don't want you to take 3 months to figure out the answer, all right? And they want it to be something that there's consensus on, not your opinion. You have to have consensus. So a multiple choice question only provides you 4 potential answers. You have to make a quick decision on which is the best answer ubiquitously throughout the whole entire world or that particular encapsulation of that reality, right? You don't have to say, well, it works here in Manitoba, but doesn't work over here in Saskatchewan, and who knows what's going on in Saskatoon, right? No, it's got to be all throughout all the provinces and 3 territories. That's where it's got to work. So you have to keep that in mind. That's the beautiful thing about a multiple choice, because it truly is a reflection of problem-solving reality in real life form. And that's why I say you have to make the best answer, choose the best answer ubiquitously that's going to address that question being asked. Well, CLS does that now, obviously. They do the multiple choice. Those going for the CLS, obviously, they're the lubrication engineers. Those are the professionals that are conducting surveys, training lubricators, assembling work lists, troubleshooting, maintaining records and applications and so forth. That's really the be all and the all. And then you have the OMA and the OMA 1. I'm going to get to the OMA 2 here in a minute because it's kind of an interesting thing. And I've been thinking I should probably go for that just out of curiosity, because I'm really curious. I'm really incredibly curious about it. But the OMA 1 is really it's an interesting deal, because what we're looking at here is a really specialized certification focused on condition monitoring, oil analysis. Obviously, understanding how to take proper samples is important, all through to advanced diagnostics, setting alarm limits, sampling design, reviewing oil analysis reports, maintaining equipment, the test slate conditions, things like that. So when you get an OMA 1, pretty much your way around oil analysis and condition monitoring. It's incredibly helpful. And so that one's been around. I think there's about close to not quite 500 folks in the world with the OMA 1. Like I said, these are the things you can look up on the STLE website. But yeah, and then there's the OMA 2. And this one's a little bit more advanced. Once again, it goes into a lot more detail, and I'll share with you some of the requirements for the OMA 2 as well. This is typically made, there's only about 20 folks left with these things. The OMA 2 is really something that lab managers would have achieved and went for. And then there's the CMFS, the Certified Metalworking Fluids Specialist. I don't have this one. This one I don't have. I want to go for it. I've been talking to my friend Fred Passman about it, and he's giving me an insight that I should probably attempt it as well. But I always looked at metalworking fluid as it's a cross between art and science, and a lot more art than science, I guess. But I don't have a lot of experience in metalworking fluid per se, but it's kind of fascinating. And I kind of dig it, but it's one of those off to the sides where if you're a CLS, you might not go for a CMFS. If you're a CMFS, you're probably not involved in lubrication per se. This is a really specialized type certification. It's a good one. It's a great one. I don't think there's any other metalworking fluid specialist certifications out there for that matter. This is it. I know STLE provides some great training in these things. Now, they don't provide a certification prep class per se, because STLE doesn't do that, by the way. They wanted to stay away from that. In fact, nowadays, they don't even recommend any certification bodies or certification prep bodies. Years ago, they did, and they got away from it because of, you know, politics and certain things that were going on, which understandably so. So now they say, you know, it's up to you to figure out what college you want to go to and just go get the degree. Otherwise, we offer up this exam, and it's, you know, you have to, you know, get trained and have experience and meet the criteria. This is actually, it's a deal where, like I said, metalworking fluid, typically folks that are involved in managing the metalworking fluid aspect of their business, most often, in my experience, they don't get so much involved in machinery lubrication per se. They're kind of separated out. In much the same way the folks that get involved in truly the oil analysis aspect of a business don't get involved in machinery lubrication. Now, in my opinion, I think they could probably pull them all together, but it's a lot of work, a lot of stuff to know. So this is one that I think that it's probably only maybe 40 or 50 folks with the CMFS as well. That might actually change because there's a lot more training going on with STLE, and there's been a big push. I think in the months and years to come, with Canada and United States and Mexico, a lot more manufacturing is going to be coming over here due to believe it or not, the reduction in energy costs, because we're so much more natural gas. I think our power grid is going to be expanding because we're all becoming electrified with our vehicles. That's going to open up a little bit cheaper electricity, believe it or not. And with that comes cheaper manufacturing, in my opinion, but what the hell would I know, right? Anyway, so I want to go into real quickly, we have a few more minutes. I want to go into a little bit of the content that's covered in the certifications, and then go into which ones seem to be the best for whatever profession you're involved in. The MLT, both of them are in here where you see 1, 2. You're going to see with this, there's about almost 60, almost 70% shared content with the 1 to 2. So if you take the MLA1 and pass it, it becomes a preparation for the MLA2. The MLA2 goes into a little bit more depth with grease and lubricant testing, lubricant formulation. And the questions they ask dealing with strategy and theory and selection application and MLA2 exams are a bit more, I'd say, trickier than the MLT ones rather. So they still have those, you still cover that, but you go into a lot more depth. So if you took an MLT class, if you took a 1 or a 2, the MLT2 class would go into a lot more depth into all these things, plus add on grease and lubricant testing compared to the MLT ones. Then the MLA 1, 2s, and 3s. That's just, it's just like I said, as you get to 3, it gets a lot more sophisticated versus the 2 versus the 1. And really, in the analyzing lubricant degradation and program development is the only where 3 diverges. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and then we'll move on to the next one. The MLT and the MLA share about 70% of the same content. And that's one of the reasons why I do combo classes for 4 days. I can cover content for both, where you can go for both exams on the Friday, and people do it all the time. Actually, it's typically what I do. Also, I'll train one Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday, in the morning, they'll take an MLT, in the afternoon, they'll take the MLA and get it. By the way, my pass rate is over 90% with all these things too. It's 93%. But anyway, the idea being is that we can combine many things in MLA and MLT. And then the LLA, they go into this is the 1s and the 2s. You'll see the 1 really is just 4 sections: sample prep, lube health, reagent management, instrument calibration. That itself in 2 days, easy. But then with the 2s, they go into a lot more things with contamination, wear debris analysis, data interpretation, quality control, compatibility analysis. And then the MLE, they have 23 sections. Like I said, if you look at this, you'll see a lot of different things that they're required as far as content goes. A lot of reliability, health and safety, oil reclamation, commissioning, program metrics, continuous improvement, planning, selection, a lot of things, FMEA. Yeah, they cover oil analysis and they cover a little bit of formulation, but really it's more of a reliability in lubrication engineer than it is a lubrication engineering certification. Because at the CLS, now this is a lubrication certification. look at all the stuff they cover. But they also cover a few other things that were a little bit on the surprising side, but I think I understand the wisdom behind it. Theory, bearings, fluid, hydraulics, gears, engines, and manufacturing, lubricants, all that stuff's understandable. Storage and handling, metalworking, fluid analysis, application. But what I always found interesting is that they look at things like pneumatics, seals, solvents, and cleaners. Okay, pneumatics, yeah, that's componentry that's lubricated. Seals, and on a secondary, if not tertiary basis, I can understand the need to understand seal and seal technology, because it's going to have a huge influence on contamination control, as well as how lubricants play off to it. Solvents and cleaners, that's an interesting thing too. That was always an interesting thing to include in the CLS body of knowledge. It almost felt like it didn't belong, but I find that when I teach it, there does seem to be a natural progression towards it, because obviously one of the things we want to do with the lubricant is a lubricated system is to keep things clean. And there seems to be, like I said, a periphery interest in solvents and cleaners. So that was always included in that. And I remember on my exam that I took a long time ago, there's probably 5 questions that dealt with that. I remember Ray's class, he spent maybe an hour on it, same with seals. But that's always been that's kind of an interesting thing. So that's where you look at pneumatics, seals, solvents, cleaners. Those are the things in metalworking that really set the CLS apart from all the others. And I'll show you a table here in a minute how that shows up. Then the OMA. The 6 different things within the OMA that they cover is the fundamentals, the wear, sampling, degradation, wear debris, and program development. And that's a pretty solid offering. And then the OMA 2 goes into a whole lot more detail according to what's on what I've learned through STLE. Now, like I said, this is the one I haven't taken yet, so I really don't even know what the exam is. The body of knowledge is interesting. It's got 5 books and a whole bunch of ASTM documents, but excuse me, as far as compared to the CLS, it's not they don't have as much in the body of knowledge. So, but it does go into a lot of things that they say they require 20 different aspects. So I'm thinking, this is actually starting to look more in terms, OMA 2 is starting to look more in terms of a darn MLE and a little bit of an LLA too. That's why I'm really curious about this one. That's why I think in the next maybe month or so, I'm going to try to go for this one to try to understand it more. But they do go into suppliers, program logistics, and tribological factors and program management. This might be a really good one for folks that are looking as far as management goes. I might make an appeal to STLE to see if at some point, well, and again, they don't let training companies really get involved in it, but I might actually, if I could get their certification, I might put together a training program and really start marketing it, because I think that looking at what's required in the OMA 2 in terms of the body knowledge, but also the content, I think that this is one of those sleepers that I think that the STLE could really take full advantage of and really do something with. I think there might be something valuable behind the OMA 2 that's worthy of investigation. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. This is one I'm going to keep my eye on and maybe do something with. And then they have the CMFS. And the 10 things here, looking at operations, metal removal formula, chemistry, condition monitoring, and there is condition monitoring with oil analysis with metalworking fluid for sure, a lot of it. Plant conditions, enclosure ventilation, health and safety, waste treatment, a lot of interesting things here. So once again, I think this is also going to be one of those that's going to start taking more and more action going forward too. I have to learn a little bit more about this, but I do think that there's a great short course that STLE puts on with this that's worthy of investigation. And this might be a really good thing to start thinking about going forward too. Now, what I did is I didn't include the CLGS, the grease thing, because really, if you guys want to learn about this, contact me directly about it. I'll chew you off about it. I just don't want it to go into too much detail on that. But I did want to let you know, as far as content goes, with the different certs that are out there. And here's a comparison. This is going to be one of 5 slides where we look at what the certification is, the governing society, and then we start looking at the various content. And I went through this painstakingly because this is how I build all my modules to try to understand. And there's some cross-contamination here. You know, some of them do share some of the same things, some of the same fundamental stuff. And they get a little bit more complicated the higher you go. And then obviously from there, we could actually start seeing how certain types of certifications definitely are heavy weighted. I mean, CLS is you're going to be looking at a lot of different things in the CLS, not so much in the OMA, but definitely a lot more in the CLS. You see all the different tech marks, and all the way through from, like I said, from lubrication selection to what have you. So there's quite a bit that gets covered, quite a bit. Now, as far as this goes, as far as what they concern, I'm going to show you at the very bottom here, where a typical class hours. And once again, this is typically how I do it. So you can actually see where the typical class hours would be that you'd experience. And I usually do 8-hour days. A lot of my stuff online, you can take at will. I mean, you can take a lesson every other minute if you wanted to, a lesson once a year, whatever you want to do. But and also I put down years work experience recommended prior to the exam, how much they require. So you can obviously see there's different levels. Another thing too, if you ever saw the XX, the XXX, those have to do with intensities as well. So now, like I said, one of the things in comparing this in terms of the CLS and MLE, and really, like I said, I think it's gosh, it's kind of like you get your PhD and you get your Doctor of Engineering degree, because I mean, the CLS is like a PhD and the MLE is like a Doctor of Engineering. They're just different, you know. And I think, in my opinion, not that I'm trying to sell you any more courses or anything, but I think if someone's going to really try to pursue this whole concept of lubrication engineering, really go for both, because each of them are going to have their merit. And for me to actually be honest and tell you which one's better overall, it's a tough thing. I don't know if you can really do that per se. I like the CLS for the fact of the matter is it goes into a lot more lubrication than the MLE does. I like the MLE because it goes into a lot more reliability engineering than the CLS does. So like I said, you're looking at, you're really comparing, apples to crabs. You really don't have a true one. So whether you're a lubrication engineer, machinery engineer, reliability engineer, even technicians, I think I actually believe probably CLS is a great one. If I was going to choose either one, probably I'd choose the CLS. Overall, for lubrication, I just think I probably would. It'd be the way to go. But I got the MLE as well. And in fact, I was part of the committee that helped build the exams for that. It was crazy because when ICML allows training companies to help build the exams, which sounds a little notorious, but there's so many of us that to vet through a particular question requires consensus of the group, and it's an arduous task, just an absolute pain in the neck. And when I was given the exam to take, I took the exam and I thought, oh wow, I submitted probably a dozen or so questions and they were accepted. Oh, it's going to be easy for me because it's 150 questions. I'm going to have at least 5 or 6 of mine, right? Nope, I didn't have one of my questions I submitted. They gave me probably something from one of these other guys that were tricky as hell. But the CLS committee, in terms of making the exams, they're professionals, but they're not trainers. So they don't get trainers involved in making the questions, which I can understand both ends of the spectrum, I suppose. So then we have the other ones, the OMA and the other MLT things. And here, really, it comes right down to what would be an option for professionals. Maybe it's recommended for professional advancement. If we see a check mark, chances are it's probably recommended for the position. And the OMA definitely would be recommended for laboratory oil analysis folks. Really good option for reliability professionals and general managers as well. Really good option for their professional advancement, so they definitely know stuff. As far as recommended for advancement, most likely that would fall under, probably not a bad deal for the MLTs and MLAs, but here, if I was going to think about anything, I think that knowing what I know about the content of OMA versus other things, for someone in manufacturing who has an oil analysis program, for someone who sells oil and grease, to have an OMA is valuable, because oil analysis and condition monitoring have always played an important role in value-added contributions to stuff such for those folks that are out there selling. For those out there using, oil analysis is a really important aspect for reliability as well. So the OMA preps you to become really good at that. Now, the OMA actually, in my experience, although I did my CLS first and then I did the OMA, I was thinking to myself, gosh, you know, if I did the OMA first, it would actually prep me really good for the CLS as well. And often when someone asks me, should I take the OMA and then take the CLS or vice versa, I'd say, yeah, do the OMA first. I'm not going to say it's easier. I don't think it is. It's not as broad as a CLS. It's a little bit more focused. And when things are a little bit more focused, you can get your hands around them a little better. And so with that respect, the OMA will definitely be good for folks who obviously have an oil analysis program that are also selling oils and oil analysis, but also provides a really good intro towards those folks who are looking to do a CLS too. Anyway, we are, look at that, huh? Ended right on time. You like that, Jacqueline? Can't hear you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was awesome. Yeah, so as Michael reviewed, the STLE has the OMA and the CLS training, and we are looking at hosting a training session, most likely be late fall. We'll check on, obviously, Michael's availability. And as what I mentioned, there is a survey that is being sent out. If you guys all can please answer the questions on that and submit that to help guide us, whether your interest is OMA, whether it is CLS, whether it is both, as well as location. Obviously, probably majority is between Edmonton or Calgary, but I like to see what people's preferences are. Obviously, will be held most likely at a hotel somewhere. As for cost and everything, we are still in the works of what we can work out. As I mentioned, though, Alberta section is not looking to make a profit of this, and we're okay with even taking a little bit of a loss on it. So we will be working with our members as well on that. Thank you very much, Michael.
Any questions or no?
I am just waiting to see here.
Okay.
If there are any questions, you can use the chat feature or the Q&A. Anyone from the executive have any questions or want comments to make that I may have missed?
I think for myself, I kind of echo what Michael said about, you know, when you're looking at OMA and CLS, I also kind of found OMA was a good prep for CLS as well. I think that was helpful.
Yeah, the prep I think is definitely essential, and I've heard lots of people comment that that definitely is an asset for obtaining the certifications and gaining that knowledge. There is one question from Dawn, just to be sure the fall training may be either CLS or OMA. Yes. We can look at both if people have enough interest in both. We will schedule 2 separate weeks and do it that way. But if there is definitely a majority, then we will focus on one, and maybe the following year or 6 months from then, we can look at the second.
One thing I have done in the past with success, which is not easy, it's a 5-day class, is I could actually do a combo CLS OMA.
Okay.
Something to think about. But yeah, normally an OMA class is 3 days, CLS is 4 days. And then the exam on the 5th, and we get a proctor come in from STLE, and they do that. You can also, there's also the online option to take the exam too. One thing I always offer up too is that if you take this class, this live class, you also have the opportunity to have all the resources on lubricant.training. So if you sign up for the STLE CLS class that we'll do with OMA, whatever, you also have an option to have complete free access to the lubricant.training sessions, which is all the classwork videotaped prior. So it's all there for you. The only thing you miss is my stupid little stories and whatnot, but you still have to hear my ugly voice, but you have all the content in front of you. And what's kind of cool is that you can actually work yourself through it at your own pace. And then after each lesson, there's a short quiz, and you just keep on working through. A lot of folks like taking advantage of that in case they don't get something, or they want to do a pre-prep. So either way, it's kind of like a nice little caveat that you can also have. So yeah.
Perfect. Oh, that's definitely great. I think that answered your question, Dawn, regarding the length of the CLS training, which would be 4 days plus 5 for the exam.
Yeah. Some people try to do it in 3. Not a good idea. You miss stuff. You go too quick, and there's not enough time for discussions. One of the great things that we've discovered is that if to get a nice cross section of folks there from lubricant companies, end users, instrument companies, salespeople, engineers, technicians, mechanics, great cross sections bring about great ideas and discussions, insights that normally doesn't happen. Now, if you try to cram this stuff in 2 or 3 days, you lose something. If you're going to take the time and effort and expense to go through something like this, give it the time it deserves. And for a CLS, it does require 4 solid days. The other thing too is that I also provide a lot of prep material, a lot of different things that you can have in order to get you going. I'll provide your whole library for that matter. Any of those of you guys who've ever been online and taken my online stuff, you realize you get about 18 books that have been available on PDF free through the different authors and like publishers and whatnot. So you get a lot of that stuff as well. So a lot of opportunity to, like I said, if you're interested, we'll get you where you need to be for sure.
No, that's great that we'll have definitely some help in making sure we support everyone who's interested in gaining their extra knowledge and certification.
Good deal.
I don't see any other questions right now. If someone does have a question later on, feel free to email the Alberta section, and then we can forward them over to Michael or address them ourselves if that's the case as well. I'd like to thank everyone.
Yeah, and if you guys want, in fact, there's a special, obviously, on lubricant.training. It's not lubricanttraining.com, it's lubricant.training, kind of a new thing. And if you are an STLE member, use STLE as a coupon code and get a percentage off as well.
Perfect.
Can I make a quick comment? I just have it's a comment / question. Thanks, Mike, for the presentation. When I did my CLS with Ray Thibault a long time ago, I was in a classroom with, like you said, a good cross section of people from different lubrication companies and different technicians and whatnot. And it was very informative. And he kept saying in the class that they had not talked about this. Some people were repeat attendees and they had not talked about it in the previous sessions because they were sponsored by a manufacturer. And I'm not going to say any of the names. It's like some of the majors. And Ray said that he couldn't talk about, like when it was sponsored by a manufacturer, they couldn't talk about certain topics that the manufacturer didn't have available to them as technology. So I found that a lot of people in my class who were from some other companies failed because they didn't have all that content. Is that something that's still going on? Do you know about what do you understand my question?
I know. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't do that. No, I go off of pure Canon Plus. So yeah, there's no restrictions. Now I have been contracted. I do this for other companies where there's oil companies, equipment OEMs and whatnot, and some, I guess you call them companies that manufacture application things, pumps or containers and whatnot, that will actually hire me to give the classes. But I go straight up, I said, I tell you what, the only time, I got to mention all this stuff, and I'm going to mention stuff that you guys don't sell. And actually, I'm going to mention stuff that are probably competitors of yours. But that's what I'm going to do. And if you don't want that, then don't hire me. I'm not going to do that. I'm not interested. I don't have to do this stuff for the money. Heck, I live off of my royalties and my books. I do this because I love doing it. I think it's awesome. The idea is that we can't ignore technology just because it doesn't fit into our business schema. That's just, then you're selling out. And Maribel, as you know me, I ain't no sellout. No sellout here. No, we're going to explore. I mean, if I get pulled in from, if Greco wants me to talk about, do a CLS class, but don't mention this lubrication, I can't do that. I can't do that. You have to talk about it because maybe they do, maybe they don't offer up NIST lubrication, but it's one example. I won't do that. Like if I'm working for a CSW, they say only mention oil safe containers. No, I can't do that either. No, that's why even today, I just didn't talk about CLS and OMA. I mean, I love it, but I had to talk about NLGI and ICML because it's there. You have to know about this stuff. If we don't know about what's out there, it diminishes our understanding and it cheapens our knowledge base. And that's no way to do it. What we can do is a critical analysis of these different things and then make our own assessments. But if we're going to actually respect the business and respect the technology, we have to explore things that are there in order for us to be enriched.
I agree 100%. Okay, cool. Thanks for answering that.
You're welcome.
I don't see any other questions or comments right now. But yeah, as always, if there is anything, bring it forward and I'll make sure we get them to Michael. Otherwise, thank you so much, Michael. And thank you everyone for attending and have a great day.
Great. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.